it did not even occur to me that there was something wrong with dieting.
Mm.
It didn't even occur to me, although my soul knew it.
Welcome to the Feminist Wellbeing Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Dozier, non-diet nutritionist, certified intuitive eating counselor, and cognitive behavior coach. And I've earned myself a PhD in diet culture. And at the age of 40, after graduating from a 25-year dieting career, I said no more. And I'm here today to guide you on how to feel damn good by reshaping your mind, not the size of your pants. In this podcast episode, I want to introduce you to Candy, who, after 40 years of being invested in many parts of her life in a journey of controlling her body, she had the courage to change personally and also in her business. Candy Wright is a graduated student from the non-diet coaching certification, and she has a very, very interesting story and journey in the world of weight neutral health. About a year and a half ago, she saw a video of me on Instagram. She saw a video of me talking about weight neutral health, and she started to listen. And then she came to my page and started to binge my content. And literally within weeks, she thinks she remember about 4 weeks from the time seeing a video of me, she registered to the non-diet coaching certification to do her personal work and then to transform her weight loss health coaching business into a weight neutral health coaching business. So she did the whole thing, personal work and professional work with me. And recently, a few weeks ago, she reconnected with me. She sent me an email about a recent doctor visit that she had where she had been struggling with some hip issues and some other symptoms issue that she had in her life. And I'll let her tell that story because I want to be sure that I'm respecting her willingness to share certain information. So I'm going to let her tell the story in the podcast that's going to follow. But she reconnected with me because she got triggered. And so I wanted to share this story to inspire you, for all the women out there who have been dieting for decades, for professionals who are weight loss coach and are curious and want to do this work, want to do the transition from leaving weight loss behind to weight neutral, but also for all the people who have done the work and have let the weight-centric approach to health behind and are journeying in the weight-neutral approach to health, and you get triggered, specifically around a medical health condition, appointment, and how you can maneuver through that. So this episode, is targeting anyone that listening to this podcast. No matter where you are, you will find a very inspirational message to keep moving forward towards what you desire in your life, be it professionally, personally. Candy will be inspiring you. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask my team to roll in the interview that I did with Candy, and I can't wait to hear from you on social media how you found this episode for you. Welcome to the podcast, Candy.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
I asked Candy to come on the podcast because we've had a coaching session recently, and we've been working together for 1+ year, like 1, 2, 3 months plus year. She has a very powerful journey, and recently she had a medical incident, we'll call it incident for now, that really shed the light on something that affect many of us and how powerful internalized fatphobia is. But the first thing I want to do with Candy is get her to talk to us about her journey, literally right off the weight loss world as a coach of weight loss to a year, 1+ year later, being where she's at. So, do you want to take us back to when we met 1 year and 3 months ago?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I had been a coach. I was doing it in the lens of emotional eating, and I always like to focus more on the emotional pieces because I knew something inside of me said, I don't know about this weight loss thing, but like that's what I've known since I was like, be honest, since I was 11, right? Because I've been dieting since I was 11. So I was coaching, doing really well in my coaching business. And just before I met you, maybe just a handful of months, I got introduced to the intuitive eating book and the health at every size book. And my mind started to really open up. And so I knew that it really had something to it. And when your information came across my feed, as it does when we're looking for this type of a thing, I was like, oh my gosh. And my mind just started to blow up. My heart started to blow up because everything started to feel like it started to fit. I was like, oh my gosh, this is why the weight loss piece of everything in my business never felt quite right, never
Mhm.
felt quite in alignment with my heart and my soul and my spirit, to be really honest. And as I learned, that kind of takes us to where we met, right? And so I
Mhm.
was really tickled. And when I saw your information, I was the kind of coach who just knew, and you had enough beautiful information out there that really kind of just led me down the journey. And it only took me like 3 or 4 or 5 days to be like, yep, sign up with Stephanie. So
When you say you've been dieting for 11, you like,
yeah, I'm 53. I'm 53 and I started dieting between fifth and sixth grade.
so
So,
40+ years
oh yes. Yeah.
of dieting,
Yeah, probably 42-ish. Yeah.
right? Look, like I just want like this is like a lot.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden things are coming into your life, challenging what you've been doing your whole life, personally and professionally.
totally.
And that I know there's a lot of people that are there right now, but there's that resistance, right? That piece of like, yeah, but like, man, I've been doing that for 40 years. Can this really be true? Did you have that moment of resistance?
I did. I did. And because I had already read intuitive eating and health at every size, there was a little bit, I think, less resistance than I think there could have been. I think my journey went exactly the way that it was supposed to go because I wouldn't have been ready for it a whole year prior. I wouldn't have been. I would have still had a bunch of resistance because I had not yet read health at every size or intuitive eating. And that just kind of set kind of a little garden seed for me to be like, wait a minute, and kind of started to open up my heart. 100%. Yeah. But yes, I remember when I was in the big heat of my business, having such a diet culture mentality that as I went into I'm 53, and so I've kind of done my business over the last 6.5 years or so in the heat of my menopause transition, right? And so when I started to really get towards those last pieces right before I went to menopause, I remember thinking such diet culture toxic thoughts. I'm like, never gonna gain weight. I'm gonna be that one girl whose body never changes, not understanding that that's not a thing. I completely had all this quote unquote really positive coach belief inside of my mind. And let me seed another thing here for you for your questions that I see you
Yeah.
writing down is being in complete denial about the aging process too. So those
Yeah.
many things were like kind of interwoven as I started to come across the health at every size intuitive eating book. But then when your stuff came across my feed, I was like, kaboom.
I just want to acknowledge something else since I have you here, and we're not necessarily going to make this about business, but I want everybody to understand also when you are in the service world, we'll call it coaching, therapy world, we are coached by business experts to tag our work to weight loss to make it sell more.
Yep.
Right. So we're like influenced to, even though it feels wrong, we're like, well, yeah, but it's going to sell more. Is that what happened to you as to why you minded your work with weight loss.
100%, 100%, but I didn't understand that that was necessarily what was going on.
Got
I
it.
didn't understand that was going on because I had been so entrenched in diet culture. I just thought, oh yeah, oh here's a great thing. Oh, well, and the whole thing, the study that or the track that I did was like this intermittent fasting kind of thing, but I put the emotional stuff with it. But I really didn't even see it. The internalized diet culture was so real. And I think that's a really good point to speak to, right? Is that how internalized it did not even occur to me that there was something wrong with dieting.
Mm.
It didn't even occur to me, although my soul knew it. I know it's really kind of strange for maybe some people to hear that. Something felt off inside. But of course I'm gonna like help people lose weight because that's what happens through the menopause process. We gain some weight usually and then we start freaking out because we've been entrenched in diet culture for so long, you know? And so yeah, of course that's gonna sell easily. I didn't do it from a malicious standpoint. I
Yes.
did it from a standpoint of like, oh, I get that. And
And
of
yeah,
course
there's a solution right over here.
there's a solution. We can starve ourselves to death through intermittent fasting. I didn't
Yeah.
realize I was starving myself to death, you know?
And I want to speak to another thing. So we met there, you had read the book, and then we started coaching. And even at the beginning, it was like challenging for you. And I could feel it in your body language and your nervous system. Like there was so many things that were challenging for you. It wasn't quote unquote easy ride.
Mm-mm. No, it wasn't. And you want to go deep real quick? We can jump
Sure.
there if you want to. In the process of doing the coaching and the inner work throughout this last year, I dug really deep and it was really hard. I did have a lot of resistance because that diet culture was so entrenched. But I realized through some deeper work that I'd been doing inside was the reason I'd been dieting. The reason I had been dieting is because at 11 years old, well, just a little bit before that, I was told that I was chubby. And then I started getting the messages, you will be loved if you're skinny. Because everybody was making fun of me. Like when I say everybody, I mean my brothers and sisters, mostly my brothers. They were kind of mean. Right? And I'm going to be really careful here because I did experience childhood trauma with a male figure. And so when I lost the weight, a male teacher that next year recognized me and said, wow, Candy, you look amazing. And I got all this positive feedback. And it was then because I trained in trauma, I was like, holy cow, that's the seed of where the trauma began when I didn't get male figure approval and love in my home. And I got it from a teacher. I was like, oh, this is what you do to help make men love you. And that was just in this last year that I realized that I found that. And
It was a
so, heck
survival.
yeah, there was a lot of resistance because there was so much underneath saying, well, if you stop losing weight, you're not going to be loved. I didn't realize that on the, at the kind of the conscious level, but underneath, that's what was going on.
And we shape our life around that. And our life becomes around that belief.
Yeah.
So the resistance that some of you may be experiencing, even if you have a one-on-one coach, it's still there. But something motivated you to keep going forward.
Yeah. I started to feel calmer and freer in my nervous system. The more that you would just introduce the little yummy bites every week with their coaching sessions and in the program and whatnot, I was like, oh, gosh, that just feels better.
It's a
It
relief.
started to feel in alignment with my whole nervous system, I mean, chakra system, your soul system, whatever you want to call it, right? But everything started to relax, and I was like, holy crap, I have been like tightening up and trying to control to be loved all my life. And oh my gosh, I don't have to do that. Oh my gosh, it's an option to not even be that. So that's why I kept going.
It's an option for people, I'll fill the blank, to be not thin and still be lovable. Is that the idea?
Yes. Yes. And still be able to love myself. Because the terror also was on the other side of the coin was, oh gosh, I won't love myself either.
Wow, I didn't never realize that. Yeah.
Because it was twofold. I got to make sure that everybody else loves me. And yeah, I have a pretty good, strong self concept, but they're always connected. in my book. I think they're always kind
Mm.
of connected. If you're trying to wait for the love outside of you to make you okay, that means there needs to be a little bit more stronger love inside too. And that's what I started to develop more and more through working in the program with you.
Mm. Well, it's interesting because I always say if we seek love outside, it's because we're not giving it to ourselves inside first.
Yeah. When I had intermittent fasted myself to a size 4, oh, it was so easy to love myself in air quotes.
It was conditional acceptance of yourself because you were size 4.
Yeah, I finally made it. And gosh, I'm 49, almost 50. And look at me, I'm a size 4. And that's totally worthy of love. I didn't
Mm.
know. I didn't understand all of the kind of the spaghetti web underneath it still.
So I'll fast track. So we went through like the basic of like intuitive eating and then body image and then health. And then recently, and this is where I want to spend a good chunk of time because literally that happened in the last 3, 4 weeks, right?
Yes, and it started a couple of months ago, but yeah.
When
Yeah.
you reached out to me 4 weeks ago, you're like something is going on. Like I just came back from I think that was the reach out. Just came back from the doctor and I came back from the doctor, you were put on some medication and you were in some pain. So
Yeah.
can you tell us like
Yeah.
we're now
Yeah.
like almost 10 months into the journey of the
hmm
non-diet approach and then you go to the doctor or there's a some kind of illness or something happened.
Yeah. As I begin to share this little story, I think just for your listeners, I think it's
Yeah.
really just a gift to give yourself the mindset of this is a journey
Mm.
because we've been so sold, oh, let's lose 30 pounds in, 29 and a half minutes, type of a thing, right? With the diet culture. I think one of the most beautiful gifts we can give ourselves and our nervous systems is that gift of, wow, you know what? This is a journey. I've been feeding my mind and soul with this since I was 11. So why would I ever expect for this to unravel and calm down in 29 and a half minutes or whatever, the diet culture would want you to be like, oh, we're going to solve your problem, or the bro culture, we're going to solve your problem. So with that in,
Thank you very much for reminding me this because it is a journey. It's not something we're going to do in 3 months or 6 months. Even if you work with a coach 101, there's still going to be some follow through. And that's exactly what
yeah,
happened with us,
yeah,
right? We hadn't worked together for 3 or 4 months. And all of a sudden something happened that triggered
right,
you. And then you
right,
came back to coaching to get help with that.
right. So getting to that trigger. So
Yeah.
just a couple, 2, 3 months ago, two things happened. I went to see just kind of like my general doc, did some labs, check-ins, etc. And then I also had been experiencing some really, really intense hip and leg pain since about January. So there were two different sets of doctors that I was seeing. I started to speak to what kind of has been able to blossom within inside me within the medical system. I'm going to talk about the hip pain and the orthopedic surgeons first, okay? And then we'll talk about the other one because there were two different pieces here that have really changed in who I am and who I was able to be. Really bad hip pain that was shooting down my leg. Really, really bad. I would exercise. I do. I love to lift weights and I like to move. I like to walk, things like that, but I would exercise in any form, and then I would get 3 days of debilitating pain. And so I finally decided to go, like, it was really hard for me to walk, to lie down, to stand, to do squat, anything. And so I finally went and saw an orthopedic surgeon. And one thing that was really different in who I am this last year is I make sure that my doctors know I'm a weight neutral believer. I don't weigh myself. So as soon as I walk in there, I'm like, nope, I don't weigh myself. And it's taken a couple of like the medical assistants off, but they don't push it. And then I always tell my doctor, first off, I'm like, I'm not here for you to give me anything around you need to lose weight. Because if you do, I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna, whatever. And so I just set my boundary and I said it really, really nicely. I'm not mean or witchy about it, right? And so my first doctor, he was totally cool. He did what he could within his scope and it didn't work. But he had somebody else in the practice that he sent me to try and get the next piece of the puzzle. He couldn't solve it. And then they sent me to the third one. I was on the third one. And with each one of these, I had, shared, hey, I'm not here for anybody to say, well, it'd be better if you lost some weight. And with the third one, I think a big, huge piece of what we talked about in our coaching was I kept advocating for myself.
Yeah.
And so with the last doctor, I finally found out that I have actually a congenital issue, which happened in my mother's womb with my hip socket. It doesn't fit my femur, my femur bone. It doesn't fit it. And I've been lucky this far in my life to have it only start hurting now. And so
Congenital hips dysplasia, is that it?
hip dysplasia, exactly. And I had a flare of this really badly back in 2016. So this kind of takes us to the next part of the story. And I had such internalized fat phobia that I went to the doctor and lost some weight, got some good PT, got myself down to a size freaking 4. And every now and again, when I would walk, it would still hurt. And I just thought, oh, well, it's better now because, I lost X amount of pounds. And that's the huge difference from who I am back in 2016 when it first started to today.
In 2016, when it started,
Mm-hmm.
were you told it was your weight, or it was just your own assessment that it was your weight?
What I really remember is that it was my own assessment that it was my weight, to be really honest, because it was almost 10 years ago. I don't remember
I
exactly
know.
think. All right. But it was so loud inside of me. I can see myself probably saying I probably should lose some weight. At least to myself. I don't know if I said it out loud because honestly it was too long ago. I don't remember. But everything inside of me was screaming, girl, you
Mm.
better lose some weight. It'll feel better because that's what they say. So it was huge, huge, huge about the internalized fat phobia at that time.
So you
Yeah.
saw one doctor, didn't really find the problem, went on the weight loss,
Mm-hmm.
and supposedly the pain got better here and there. But
Did
at
some good
that time, you
PT.
didn't seek the real answer because
No. Mm-mm. That's
because of
it.
the internalized fat phobia. I just said, like, probably even some shame going into the doctor office with hip
100%.
issues.
100%. 100%. Because at the time my feet hurt and my legs hurt and my hip hurt, all these things hurt. And I thought, oh, it's just because I've gained a bunch of weight. And so, yeah, I think that is the most important point. One of the most important points for today is my internalized fat phobia at the time kept me from finding the real answer. I have a congenital issue. I didn't push it back then. I was like, okay, yeah, we get PT and we lose some weight.
And that's why I asked you to come on the podcast, because it's kind of a sensitive issue. And I believe to some degree that our own internalized fat phobia sometimes is what prevents us from full access to care. Not to deny the fact that there is a shit ton of externalized, like put on us fat phobia from the medical system, but it's also sometimes our own fat phobia that prevents us from demanding, asking for the next level of answer.
100%. Yeah. And that's exactly who I was back in 2016. That's not who I am today. Yeah.
Hence why you went to treat doctor.
Correct. And when they sent me to this particular type of PT that didn't work for me, I'm like, not staying, not going. We're going to find somebody else. So it was me being much more confident. Like, nope, we're going to find something that works for my body. We're going to find something that works for my body because that is what it's about.
And so right now, you've been diagnosed with hip dysplasia. And one of the things you told me is just getting a diagnosis, no longer thinking it's in my head or it's in my body. That's in itself, it's a huge relief of emotional suffering.
Yeah. And I can't believe I'm already not crying with you, but yes. When I first found out, immediately when the words came out of the doctor's mouth, I just lost it. I started bawling because I had been suffering on and off for 10, for 8 years, I guess 8, 9 years. And no one had ever told me I had a congenital issue, that this was the way that my body and bones had developed, a lack of development actually, and that this was my lot. And it meant so much to just know what it was, and B, then be able to mentally and emotionally work to go to acceptance,
Hmm.
like that spiritual acceptance instead of the resistance, like, oh no, the only choices are the fat or the blah 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 or whatever. No, once I knew what it was, I'm like, oh, now I can do something. I think we all go through something like that when like we finally understand what's going on with our body. Like, oh, okay, these are the things that can be done now.
I think it's because I know for me, is I stopped blaming myself.
Yeah.
Right. So blame myself or my body. For me, it's the same, right? I stopped thinking I did something wrong. But it's actually just how I was born. That's how the universe put me or God put me on the earth to have this
Yeah.
scoliosis.
Yes. What I've learned is when I had the heavier body before, it was all about not being the good girl. And now I know it's not about not being the good girl. It's like, oh yeah, wow. Hallelujah. Now I know I was born this way.
And it's the same thing as the perimenopause and menopause we started on. Like
Mm.
when we believe that we did something wrong and that's why we have the symptoms, like we load ourselves with even more emotional suffering and mental suffering that needs to be where when we just like it's the way our body is, like we're going through changes.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why so many women go into, especially in our Gen X age group, because we were so fed so much toxic diet mentality. So we go into menopause thinking, okay, I better lose weight.
And so can we address also this? One of the things that we uncovered in our coaching is that like many of us, you were using the pain, like in 2016, the pain as a motivator to lose weight, like the righteousness of losing weight because of the pain.
Yeah, totally, totally. Because that's the only answer I knew. And so if I was a good girl, aka the righteousness, then I would make myself not have as much weight on that hip because that's going to solve everything. And then when I got, shrunk myself and starved myself to basically intermittent fasted down to a,
Non-existence.
yeah. Well, then I was a good girl. I fit in. So yeah, yeah,
And you were a good girl and a good person who takes care of their health.
yeah.
Like the whole healthism, like this, that we need to do everything that it's in our power to take care of our health. So you shrunk yourself to a size 4 in order to relieve the pain. But as we know, you weren't able to maintain it because that's just not how the body works. And
Mm.
now, quote unquote, the pain is back in 2024 and it's the weight. And that's where you reached out to me. Like it's in part like I've gained this weight. So I must be causing that hip pain.
Yeah, and I think this is going back to that journey part, like having so much patience, having so much compassion, having so much just gentleness in, yeah, this is a journey. Like I didn't explode and freak out and like put myself on a diet. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a new experience. And I've never been the me that I am with the non-diet lens and all these things. And I'm still a million percent committed to not dieting. Oh, now what do I do? Because it was new for me. Yeah.
Well, we don't know what we don't know. So what else could be
Yeah.
the solution? Can we talk about the other health,
Yeah. So I got some lab, just like some general lab work done.
yearly medical?
Yeah. Yeah. And I had higher blood pressure as well as higher cholesterol. And she wanted to put me on a statin on Crestor that would knock both of those out. And that one kind of messed with my head too. That ignited that trigger of, oh no, I'm not a good girl. It really ignited that. So yeah, that when we were coaching, we coached on both of these things. And so that came up. I'm not a good girl. I haven't been taking care of my, I've been eating so much sugar this last year, or whatever. There was a huge shame cloud in my chest. It was like,
Mm.
oh, because to me, Crestor equaled shame. Both of my parents are type 2, yeah, type 2 diabetes, as well as have been on, heart med, same type of thing with high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And I've always been like, I'm not going to turn into them. I'm not going to turn into them. And so there was a lot of parent shaming.
You have, like most people, the belief you could control it.
Well, that's what I've been sold on my life. And so I have a really big kind of confident part of me, like, well, I can be that one.
I can control it because my parents didn't control it, then they got sick. And now, so I'm going to control it and not get sick.
Mm.
And that's what I want people to hear is that in many, many cases, it has nothing to do with the control or the good girl. It has to do with just how your body's genetically born to be, especially when you have two parents who have those conditions
Yeah. Yeah. And grandparents. So yeah, 100%.
and grandparents.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of takes us to the next part of what I mentioned before was like how everything interweaves, not only, okay, we passed the menopause transition, but now into the aging, the next section of aging transition. And this is really interesting. I've done a lot of thought. I don't want to like go off on it here, but
The go
done a
for
lot of
it.
thought about, cool then. All right. About the thought about like the aging process. We don't study
Hmm.
over 50 as an age of development. The Gen Xers were talking about menopause because we're not going to take it lying down. That's just who we are. The boomers didn't talk about it, so we are, right?
Hmm.
And now I'm thinking about, okay, now I'm post-menopause, 3.5, 4-ish years. And even more changes have been like, it's not just perimenopause, sis. It's totally, this is a 10-year process and sometimes 15 for people. And if we're really, really honest, no, it's a whole life process. It's a whole life process. And I don't think enough of us have really like studied or thought about the aging process because we're in this eternal youth. But with the second that our estrogen and our progesterone say adios, boy, does that body start to change. Yeah, you can take some hormone therapy, but it doesn't mean it's not gonna change. It might mean that your hot flashes might go down a little bit. It might mean that you might have, different headaches. It might mean that you'll be able to sleep through the night, a few different things. It's not going to turn you into a 25-year-old. And I think that's part of what the mindset that I had just this eternal youth, giant culture, fight aging thing. And now I'm like the opposite. I'm like, wow, I wish we were more like Asian cultures because they honor the aging process. Now that's a blanket statement, but they honor their elderly. And here it's vilified in Western culture.
Absolutely. And it's capitalized.
Oh,
Are you of the mind that as you age, you're supposed to have some symptoms and it's okay to have them? Is that what you're saying?
that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. I was not able to accept that or be in that mindset at age 49, even just 4 years ago. I was still hell bent on, I'm going to be skinny in a size 4
Mm.
until I go into the grave and I'm going to be so healthy. I didn't know that I was going to have hip dysplasia, not be able to exercise for a long, long time. I didn't know that I was going to have all of these mental and emotional and physical symptoms of the menopause transition. Didn't know that. And I think that's kind of one of the most beautiful things that we can kind of think about the aging process is we don't know.
Mm.
We just don't know. Even when you say, we can't control it, there's a part of that old programming that's inside of me that gets a little trigger like, oh, 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 oh. I think the words that work better for me, and I totally do agree with you. I think the words that work better for me are, we just don't know.
Oh, yeah.
We just don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen with our bodies. Yeah, sure. I'm going to eat intuitively now and I'm going to have some beautiful protein and some veggies and like my snacks and all the things I want to do too. And I have no idea what my journey is actually what it's going to look like. How can I build the inner tools of nervous system regulation and rolling with the waves of the aging process? Um, I think there's a lot of marketing. I can go on and on. You tell me when to be quiet, but like a lot of marketing around aging gracefully or aging whatever the word, the marketing word du
Mm.
jour is, right? And what if it's really about, wow, I'm learning to listen to my body, learning to really hear my body, which is intuitive eating, right? Learning to hear my actual intuition spiritually and riding the wave and being more just really gentle with the process. I like gentle aging. I like
Oh, I love
understanding
that.
that. I know, right? Gentle aging or the just riding the wave of the aging process.
And not
That's
expecting it to be different than it is.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And like this, when you talk about nervous system regulation, to me, that's the piece about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, being comfortable, being uncertain, that no matter what, you're going to have your back.
And that control that we've been speaking about is the opposite of that.
And I'm not going to blame my body. I'll go back to the Crestor and the blood pressure. without revealing too much of when we coach, but like we realize that, yeah, at first it may seem that it's the weight, but when we start looking at the whole well-being, like the spectrum of things, you were more stressed, there was thing going on in your personal life, you
Mhm.
weren't eating regularly, like we started to uncover things, but the weight bias gets us to just look at one thing instead of
Yeah.
looking at the whole picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really, really such a good point to bring up. There was stressor, there were stressors this last year, and my nervous system felt a bit dysregulated from different things that have been going on. 100%. Yeah. And I love that you brought that out too. It was so, so helpful because, gosh darn it, it makes me want to like, I go through these like anger and gentleness, like waves of emotion every time I see the next level of where the diet culture's been grabbing me, right? It's like, okay, wait, don't look just at weight, look at everything. You're a whole person. You've got emotions, you've got mental, you've got nervous system, all the things, right?
Spiritual.
Spiritual, all the things, yeah. Mhm.
Right? And that's what diet culture gets us to look at is just our physical body and our weight. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
there's 75% of all the other shit that we are blinded to see that impacts our health that we are
Actually raises your
bypassing.
cholesterol. Yes, they actually will raise your cholesterol because of the stress.
It's proven that it's like the stress increases your cholesterol, but we're not going to go there. But
Yeah.
the point is, you are more than just your physical body,
Yeah.
you are a whole person.
Yeah.
Because we just realized, I'll go back to menopause. I know for you guys listening, we're jumping back and forth, but this is just how our brain works.
Mhm.
We're recording this on October 17th, and 2 days ago, we released an episode on the feminist guide to perimenopause. And one of the things I said on the show that it's like I got so many messages is that I'm not making my perimenopause symptom a problem anymore. And that really offended people. That night sweats and waking up every 2 hours, I'm supposed to get mad at that. I'm supposed to like not accept that. If I'm like a person who cares for her health, I shouldn't be accepting that.
Oh, that is so, so important. Can I share two little things about that? Because I am a certified menopause doula, so it's part of the work that I have been doing too. And people got offended by that. I think that's a really interesting to just take a look at. There's a really good reason why.
Mm.
I've been there. I didn't know any other way.
Mm.
I didn't know any other way because I had been trained to fight anything that didn't go along the way that I wanted it to go and control it the way that I wanted to be. That's how I've been, our society